For nearly 2 decades, Elizabeth Palmer has gone where the big story is.
The gun battle like this in the city, police being fired on for hours.
Traveling to hot spots around the world.
Neither side is moving forward or back, just trading occasional fire.
To show viewers what's going on in the most dangerous places.
This is exactly where that lethal mortar fell.
As senior foreign correspondent for CBS News, she has covered the war in Syria since the start of the uprising in 2011.
It's 6 p.m. The heavy shelling doesn't usually start till 9.
She traveled to an area under bombardment for rising up against the Assad regime to see how people were coping under siege.
It's too dangerous to stay above ground. Sana, wake up. We pick up our bedding and hurry to the relative safety of the basement.
Many of her stories focus on the human cost of the war.
Medics say 8 people were killed in that neighborhood alone. And as usual, some of the victims were children.
After her reports about the devastation during the siege of Aleppo, the Assad government banned Palmer from the country. Born in London and raised in Canada, Palmer says curiosity led her to journalism. She worked for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, based in both Moscow.
As a geologist, he could wander these woods without making the KGB suspicious.
And Mexico City, before moving to CBS News in 2000. Palmer was one of the first U.S. correspondents to helicopter into Afghanistan after the September 11th terror attacks.
The heavy aerial bombardment from overnight continued well into the morning.
She would report on that war for nearly 2 decades. She also covered the U.S. war in Iraq.
Every day, sectarian violence kills dozens of innocents.
Palmer went to Egypt during the Arab Spring, where she found herself in the middle of the mob in Tahrir Square. The crowd assaulted some female journalists, and she was forced to defend herself.
There was a guy in front of me, and he just put his hands up and grabbed my breasts. That time I got angry, and I certainly kicked him, and I think I punched him, and he looked astounded.
Palmer has a knack for tracking down people who don't want to be found, like the mastermind of the consulate attack in Benghazi, Libya, which killed U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 others.
He said, if the Libyans want to come and arrest me, they know where I live.
She caught up with Vladimir Putin on his way to play hockey in 2017 to ask him about the firing of former FBI Director James Comey.
Мы не имеем к этому никакого отношения.
We have nothing to do with it.
Президент Трамп действует в рамках своей компетенции, предусмотренных Конституцией и законом.
He's acting in accordance with his competence.
Tenacious as ever, she maneuvered her way into Iran's nuclear complex. Just one of 2 Western journalists to get access to it.
Research director Manusha Madadi is eager to reassure the world he's not trying to build a nuclear bomb.
Oh, that's not true.
For the past 11 years, she has covered Iran extensively. She was there last year after President Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal.
Started shouting death to America, and any moment they're going to set fire to the American flag.
She reported from China on the 30th anniversary of the massacre in Tiananmen Square.
Those events have just been erased by the Chinese government.
And demonstrated how the Chinese have censored the historic uprising.
Do you recognize this picture?
No.
Minutes later, the police showed up and in the end detained and held us for 6 hours.
Palmer understands doing her job means putting her life in danger.
It's designed so that explosives would fit in the top part.
Her former colleague, Kimberly Dozier, nearly died covering the war in Iraq, and Dozier's camera crew was killed. It hit home again when Palmer's friend, war correspondent Marie Colvin, was murdered in 2012 while covering the war in Syria.
I think we all go around with a certain "it won't happen to me" belief. It's entirely false because you can control for risk very well. You can make sure that you give yourself the best possible odds in any dangerous situation, but it's never going to be 100%. There's always going to be a wild card in the deck.
Despite the danger, Liz Palmer wouldn't want it any other way.
It's made me happy, and it's kept me interested and given me such wonderful adventures and even more wonderful friends and colleagues.